Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 11 game NBA slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, check the links in the description for Discord memberships, for Discord and YouTube memberships. Check those out as you'll get my daily write-ups for this sport and a couple others as well. So let's go ahead and get into the slate here. So let's get into the injury report. For the Wizards, Daniel Gafford is questionable. For the Nets, Cam Johnson and Nicholas Claxton are out. For the Trailblazers, Anthony Simmons is out. For the Raptors, Anobi is questionable. For the Heat, Richardson and Caleb Martin are both doubtful. Grizzlies, Kennard, Aldama, Adams, Morant, and Clark are all out. And for the Lakers, Vanderbilt is out. So that looks like a pretty normal injury report for today, though I do think a couple other guys could jump onto this today, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's go ahead and get into our uh, players here. So we're going to start with our point guards. Now, you'll notice that I do have a couple of guys in my core plays. Now, I'm going to talk about them when I get to them, but they are a little bit higher risk than some days, so do keep that in mind. So let's start with our guards here, our point guards specifically, excuse me. So we're going to start with Luka. Oops, hang on one second. I'm sorry about that, guys. My thing's messing up. It won't go over there. Let's try this. Okay. Start with Luka. There we go. He's had two straight 70 fantasy point games to start the season. Now his price has popped up to $12,000, which means he does need 60 fantasy points to pay off here. He will look to continue to put up these big numbers, and he's had a day off, though. It is a tougher matchup against Memphis. That said, they don't have all their normal players starting, so I look for, or playing even, so I think he's going to have all the opportunity to have a gigantic game, and he definitely has triple-double potential. And his last game against Brooklyn, he dropped 49 real points, so he's definitely capable, and he's definitely going to be the top tier option on Dallas all season long. Then we're looking at Shea Alexander. Now he has had a pretty solid start to the season, though he had a tough game against Denver. I mean, a lot of guys have tough games against Denver. He's gonna have a bounce back here against Detroit, and he's had some really nice games so far this season. Um, Detroit should be a lot easier to get through defensively. He just didn't shoot the ball well against Denver, but Murray can be a problem defensively. So I look for him to bounce back here and have a pretty solid game. He also has good rebounding potential and assist potential, and he'll get maybe a steal or two. So that gives him a lot of upside, and his price is still pretty solid right now. So I expect it to get over 11,000 eventually. Then we're gonna look at Drew Holiday for Boston. Now he's in an interesting spot here. He's got a good matchup here against Washington, and he's had a pretty good start to the season as well. His price has come up a little bit, but he's still in play on this particular slate. I do think he's a great option, but he is, he isn't the first scorer on his team. He's the second or third, but he seems to be fitting in pretty nicely here. So I think he's a viable option here. Then we're going to look at Ben Simmons. Uh, which it still boggles my mind that Ben Simmons is actually playing well. So right now he's had two start two good games to start the season. He's been close to triple doubles in both. Granted, the biggest concern is the points from that perspective. While he's playing well, he's somebody to consider, though I don't know how long that will last. But he is in play right at this moment, so let's take a look at him from that perspective. Then we'll look at Dinwiddie for Brooklyn. Now he's going to be a very focal point of this offense, especially early in the season. He had a really rough first game against Cleveland, but he bounced back against Dallas, and Charlotte is going to be a pretty good matchup for him as well. As they're a little bit weaker defensively. He should have a good opportunity to have a big game here. He's going to take plenty of shots in this one, it looks like, and so I think he's a great option on the slate. Though just keep in mind that he does randomly have bad games. But most of the last season, when he was a top option, he had really solid outings most of the time. I do expect his price to pop up to over 7,000 eventually, so get him while he's cheap. Then we're going to look at Cameron Thomas for Brooklyn now. Uh, we'll see if he draws a start or not, but he's come up in price as a result of his play, so be aware of that. But he's been over 30 real fantasy. He's been over 30 real points in both games so far, and he can definitely fill up the scoring. Um, he had a few games last season like this as well, so I expect him to have some potential to do that again. And his price, while it has come up, he's still a little bit cheap for what if he scores 30 real points, then what are you gonna do? Obviously, it'd be nice if he would just draw a start, but we'll have to wait and see if he does. But he should play over 25 or 30 minutes. So then we'll look at Kobe White, excuse me, for Chicago. Man, Chicago's been a mess so far this season, but Kobe has been a bright spot in the first two games. He was terrible against Detroit, but I look for him to bounce back here, and a plus matchup with Indianapolis, which is a bit faster paced game, which he should probably like more. I look for him to have a bigger opportunity here. His price has popped up a little bit though, so do keep that in mind, but he's definitely capable of a good game here. Also consider Malcolm Brogdon, Derrick Rose, Damian Lillard, and Alexander Walker. Moving to shooting guards, we'll start with Drew Holiday. Uh, he can play at this position as well. Dinwiddie can also play here, and so can Cam Thomas. Then we'll look at Dennis Schroeder for Toronto. Now, Schroeder has started pretty solid for his new team, and I think he's a great price still. He's actually only come up to right under $6,000 at this point, so that does give him a lot of viability on the slate as he's a pretty cheap play. He's also been performing pretty well, so he looks like one of the better options for this team. He's been pretty consistent. Uh, Typically, he's not a big scoring guy, but he's played well and he's getting a lot of assists. So while he's doing that, he's definitely somebody I would consider, and his price will probably come up more. Then we're going to look at Malcolm Brogdon. Now he can. He looks like a great play on this slate as he hasn't started yet, but with Simmons out, he's going to have to fill up more minutes, and he played 26 minutes, scored 33 fantasy points yesterday. His price came up a little bit as a result, but I think he's going to continue to rise, so you might as well get him while he's still under $6,000 while Simmons is out. He looks like a pretty good play on this slate. Uh, if his price is a little bit cheaper, he would be a core play and by an easy margin. Then we're going to look at Alec Burks for Detroit against Oklahoma City. He started the season pretty solid. Now he's not starting, but he's coming off the bench, and so he's worth a look as a value play. He still feels a bit risky. As long as his minutes stay over 25, he should be all right though. And he's one of the better options in this price range. It's a pretty popular price range today, but he's definitely a capable option on this particular slate. Uh, then we're going to look at our small forwards here, and we're going to get to LeBron. Why is my cursor not working again? I don't understand this. Anyhow, there it goes. We'll start looking at LeBron here for the Lakers. Now, LeBron is $9,100, which he will not stay under this price range for very long. He started pretty solid this season. He only had 41 in the opener against Denver, but that's Denver. The Magic do tend to have a decent defensive game, but uh, he's still going to be able to dominate this team. The only question here is he's played 39 minutes yesterday. You could look for him to take some time off today or be questionable even, but they haven't announced anything about him yet, so we'll have to wait and see. However, so that is a concern, so do keep that in mind, but he's still just too cheap. And until he gets closer to 10,000, he's going to be somebody you have to look at each day. Ben Simmons can also play at this position. Then we're going to look at Azure, excuse me, Azure Thompson for Detroit. Um, he's one of the few rookies that has really started the season pretty well. His price is still really fair here. He's actually gone down $100 from the last game against Chicago, and he's got a pretty good matchup here against Oklahoma City. Now, OKC does have some good defensive players, but I do look for him to continue to play pretty solid. Detroit has looked pretty good as a team, in fact, which is surprising, but he's playing well. And so while he's playing well, he's somebody to consider. It's a favorable matchup here. His worst game was game one against Miami, which everybody tends to be tough, has a tough fantasy day against Miami. So he's also just doing it. He's not scoring a ton of points, but he's getting lots of rebounds and he's getting some assists as well. So he's really moving the ball very well. So I like his upside in this matchup, and so he's definitely in consideration here. Then we'll look at Zaire Williams from Memphis. He's had some good games so far this season. Uh, he is starting the last game, so we'll have to see what he can do here. Um, if with the increase in minutes, he's definitely got some utility, especially as cheap play. There's not too many guys in his price range that can, that are gonna be able to get the floor that he has right now. But do keep in mind that he only played a few games last season as a starter. That was 4 games, and in those 4 games, he had 2 good ones and 2 bad ones. So while he's playing well, he's definitely in consideration, though. But I'm not sure how long this will last. He's also not got any blocks or steals so far this season, so do keep that in mind as well. But he's a rebounding. He got good rebounding skills and good. He can score pretty good, though he's not the top option. But with all the injuries to the team, he's getting minutes. Alec Burks can also play here at small forward, and then Royce O'Neal for Brooklyn is in play. He's got a good matchup here. Now he's a guy that fantasy guys will definitely remember utilizing quite a bit as when he does draw starts. Now, yesterday he did play, or the last game against Dallas, he played 34 minutes, and he feels like an okay value play. He's been a DFS staple, off and on throughout the years, but uh, he can round out your roster at the very least. I don't love him, but he's cheap and he has better floor than most people in his price range, and so that gives him some utility. You could also consider DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Kuzma, Herb Jones, and Jason Tatum at this position. Moving in their power forwards, we're going to look at Giannis for Milwaukee. Now, he's got some really nice upside in this matchup. Um, Obviously, he's pretty expensive now. His price has popped up over 11,000 finally, which I figured would happen pretty quick. Now, he had a big monster game yesterday where he uh, scored 26 and 11, so he's actually done pretty good so far this season, though his price popping up definitely limits his upside. And his minutes tend to be a little bit sporadic. Um, Not only that, but they didn't play well against Atlanta, but he was a bright spot. His turnovers need to come down to really be favorable, but he's definitely in play today against Miami, though this is a tough matchup, so do keep that in mind. LeBron can also play at this position. Porzingis here for Boston, also in play. Now, Porzingis has started the season for Boston really well in his two games, one against the Knicks and Miami. He's been over 40, almost 40 fantasy points in both. He scored 38 and 50, so this is a much easier matchup against his former team, and I think he's going to have a big opportunity to have a huge game here. I look for a double-double. He doesn't need to get a ton of blocks and steals, but he's definitely got that capability, and Washington probably give up some, so I look for him to have a big game, and he's a great option on the slate. He was very close to being a core play. Then we'll look at Ezra Thompson. He can also play at power forward. And then Jalen Johnson here for Atlanta. He's also in play. Now he drew the start yesterday in his last game against Milwaukee, and I look for him to continue to do that. He's played really well so far. His price is coming up though, so do keep that in mind. But he's playing about as well as any guy in his price range right now. And while he's playing well and just getting starts, he's worth taking a look. They kind of have a logjam at the small forward / power forward position, but he seems to be carving out himself a role. And while he's doing that, then he's definitely in play. Atlanta's looked pretty solid from that perspective, at least when it comes to their forwards. So he's definitely in play here. Also considered DeMar DeRozan, Kuzma, and Jaren Jackson Jr. here at this position. And then moving up to the center position here, excuse me, we can put in Porzingis. We can put in Valanush. Oops, wrong thing. Hang on. We can put in Giannis and Porzingis here, but we do have one other option, and Jonas Valanciunas. Now, Valanciunas has not particularly been great so far this season. He's been inconsistent, but with Zion playing, his minutes are going to be a little bit inconsistent. However, he does have good upside, and he only had 4 rebounds in the last game. I look for him to have a bigger game today against the Warriors, who are going to shoot a lot of shots. Though that could make the Pelicans go a little smaller, but I do expect him to play a good complement of minutes and get some good fantasy point output because he can shoot threes and he can get rebounds as well. So he's an interesting option on the slate, and he's still pretty cheap. Then we'll look at Okongwu for Atlanta. Now he's another guy for Atlanta that's been playing pretty well. He's not starting, but he is coming off the bench and putting up pretty good numbers. He does feel high risk, high reward, but his price is still pretty fair, so I think he's a viable option on the slate. Also consider Jaren Jackson Jr., Bobby Portis, and Vucevic at this position. Thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.